Hello, hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Sirlinksalot podcast. I'm your host, Artemis, and I am here with Sirlinksalot founder, Nick Altimore. Now, today we're going to have a little bit of a chat around something that I'm sure everybody has had on their mind with the recent return to office mandates and the increased frequency of remote work and hybrid work and things like that. And that is meetings. So
Yes.
it's something that literally everybody who is in the corporate world and some people who are not have to deal with. And how certain people and certain companies decide to deal with it is actually really quite fascinating. So I kind of want to hear and pick your brain about your experience with this, Nick. And what are your initial thoughts just right off the bat?
Anybody who's worked with me or even tried to work with me will note that I am pretty anti-meeting.
Ooh.
Unless it's an absolute must, then if I accept a meeting, it's typically just going to be to let somebody newer to knowing me kind of get their meeting fill. And in that meeting, I'll typically propose that there's no real need for meetings or like once a month going on based on reporting. And then honestly, like in the interest of just not wasting time. I think a lot of people go down the meeting rabbit hole in sort of a way to look busy. And in the end, you could get, a multiplier off of saving your meeting time and working on that Excel file or, sending off a couple of emails that help different people understand, what they need or, reporting or any number of things. And I think, meeting culture is personally, I guess, to put it simply, something for boomers that, pre-internet. It's not for
Yeah.
me. I'm just going to be honest. Yeah, not for me.
That's like the biggest green flag. I remember when I was first brought on board in the Sirlinks team, that was one of the first things that Nick said to me was, "Yeah, we're not really going to be doing a whole lot of meetings, but we're just going to be touching base and we're also, on Slack." I was like, "Oh my gosh, like I think I looked a little bit too relieved. I thought that how relieved I look was a red flag, but
No, we
in
like that here.
actuality in actuality, it's because a lot of people find that the more visibility that you have means that you don't have to actually be doing a whole lot of work. I was concerned that you would think that I was one of those people. But in actuality, it's just because I feel like I'm more productive when I don't have to take giant chunks out of my day in order
Right.
to talk to people.
I mean, how often, when you do have to take meetings, how often are you sitting there? Like, because a lot of people, like, it's like mid morning or like late morning to midday. And so maybe you're locked into something, but then all of a sudden, like 1 hour or 30 minutes before the meeting, you're kind of checked out, right? And if I'm a firm advocate for, I think if you start a work day and you want to have a solid workday where you're actually productive, specifically in tech. Now, this like it'll go into a lot of different things, but specifically in tech, where you are kind of designing your own structure for what you're doing throughout the day, flow is absolutely ultra important in my opinion. And you want to get into a flow state. Now, we're talking about flow state, the psychology of actually like going through an activity and giving it your utmost attention, right? So that you can just you're embodying the person that is going to complete whatever the task. It's really easy to do in something like sports. It's a lot harder to do with like an Excel file or something like that if you're like cataloging a lot of data. But flow is, in my opinion, ultra important, especially for like jobs like this. So if in the morning where I've got like all that gusto, I'm ready to go, and it probably takes like an hour of doing an activity, kind of messing around, like you make your coffee, all that. But like when you get into the flow, then it's like an obsessive kind of you're pigeonholed in there. And if you've got a meeting
Yeah.
coming up midday, or like just later on, like your mind stops. You can't exist in that flow state because you're worried about this stupid meeting that's coming up that's like 30 minutes of oftentimes stuff that could just be cataloged in a tight email, right? Which or we discussed it, right? Like we're on Slack and that's how we handle operations. What's beautiful about that is like anybody at any given moment throughout the day can get in there And sometimes, like, you've seen it, like, I'll just have random thoughts and it's like, well, before I forget it, let me type it in there. No need for a meeting, no need for like this long-winded 30-minute conversation where I'm taking you out of your day, me out of my day. Um, like if especially in
Yeah.
tech, like when we see these micromanagers that don't have to do the dirty work, I feel like you see it a lot in like bloated companies backed by like venture capital and stuff. Like a buddy of mine who I won't name comes to mind, but he's like, just providing shareholder value, got my chat GPT talking points and got to have some meetings today, but it's all just about showing that you did something with your time. Well, but actually what you're
It's
doing
all
is
theater, yeah.
yeah, it's theater. Exactly. You're taking people out of their flow state, out of what they're supposed to be doing. And especially if you're working with like coders or something like that, I think it's like one of the worst things that you can do, on a regular basis. Uh, Now, I will say that I am prone to being so anti-meeting that it is also an issue. Like I can see my
Is it?
shortcomings. Yeah. Yeah, specifically
Oh,
like with a couple of employees that I know like having the meetings. Um, I think you should carve out like a little bit of time, maybe like once or twice a month to have FaceTime, like where you're actually like, personality to personality going over things. And so like if you're going to do that, then make it the flow state for that particular day, right? Like I've got meetings
right.
throughout the day, and if I'm going to do meetings, then typically then I'll go ahead and I'll do some studio time where I'm talking into the camera, whatever. But it's carved out. It's what I'm going to be doing all day, and it ties the room together, so to speak,
Yeah,
right?
I feel like it's different though if you're just doing it like once a month for like a catch up or a one-on-one or
Sure.
something. But I feel like I have this prejudice ingrained against people who insist on having meetings more than once or twice a week. It makes
Yeah,
me think that in general, they're just like inefficient people. Do you know what I mean? So I don't
100%.
know. Obviously, like with the aforementioned employees who like having those meetings, if they would prefer to have meetings more often, my first thought is like, why? Like, what are you getting from that?
Sure. And these, I guess we're talking about my shortcomings on that, right? Because I won't schedule the monthly meeting a lot of times, especially if things are like going well with like that particular endeavor, etc. Now we'll like chit chat and Slack and stuff like that, but I'll say that I think I'm so anti-meeting that it's probably I need to go back towards a little bit more meeting time, in just my work thought process because
What are the things that are sacrificed when you avoid meetings at all costs?
well, I feel like you can miss sort of like some of the gauging on whether like in this case, like the employee feels like they've got more that they could be doing or less, etc. And like if the thing
Oh,
is like the people I'm talking about, like I wouldn't say at all that there's any worry that they would be wasting time or anything like that. It's not the case at all. It's that they are utilizing their time and they want to be doing a really good job for you. And whenever there's like a lack of communication, especially on a face-to-face level, people that are real go-getters will then maybe feel insecure about how much they are getting done or producing for the name of the whole, right? And so in that case, I'd say, a meeting can be useful if you're strategic with it, and that I should be a little bit better. It's just I'm taken away from the full-on I hate meetings narrative to say that like it's not all bad, even if I just am not a huge fan of them.
I think that boils down more to communication style in general
Mhm.
because I understand that some people just feel better seeing people face to face. And when you're dealing with companies that are fully remote and have awesome employees all around the world like we do,
Yeah,
then I can understand how it would be easier to feel kind of disconnected from like the mission of the company if they're not
sure.
like right there in front of your face, if that's something that you're used to. But for
Mhm.
people like me who, the large majority of my marketing career has been remote. I was only in office for 3 months out of 5 or 6 years, and
Oh, wow.
I did not, I did not like it. Mostly because when you're dealing with online meetings, like I said before, it's way easier to actually have that face-to-face connection or some semblance of it, it's also easier to actually schedule a meeting, and it's
Sure.
harder to escape a meeting also for people like us who are just not a huge fan of it. But when you're in the office, you're just there with everybody, and they're like, oh, let's just call a quick, everybody just like let's
Yeah,
huddle
everybody
really quickly
stop what you're doing and get
right
up
now.
and yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and I just can't deal with that because, like you said, once I get my tunnel vision and I'm working and I'm staying productive, I'm getting stuff done. I'm not the kind of person who is flexible when I'm
Yeah.
disrupted. I'm actually
Yes.
not flexible in most things now I think about it, but particularly when my tasks are getting disrupted and then my brain gets scrambled, I do what I'm supposed to be doing, and then I get disrupted, and then I actually have to go back to my entire to-do list to
Yeah.
remember what I was supposed to be doing for the entire day. That just throws me off.
Yeah. Yeah. Because hitting that flow state is not something that's easy to do. Like you have to get momentum mentally in order to get into that state. And even like I remember my last, career oriented job where I went into an office. If I was in a flow state and then somebody, I didn't care whether it was a manager, another employee, whatever, came up and like made me take my headset off and like stopped me from being in my flow, like I would get pissed off about it because yeah, then there is a restart period, right? It's like, I don't know, falling in a race or something like that and like, having to dust yourself off, get back into the mental state where like before you're somewhere else and you are just, like you said, tunnel vision, getting the job done. And typically when you're in that flow state, like you're fluid and even if it was like a job you really didn't want to be doing, at least then you're like content on the mission, right? Like you can get it done. There's been like some jobs where I think about it, tangled mess of like, 500 plus domains that I've got to go through. And like a lot of times in order to figure out the system, if it's not laid out for you, you're creating a mental SOP on how you're going to get this job done. And you only figure it out as you're doing it, right? Nobody's there to
Right.
teach you how to do it. And so when you do that, then like you'll figure out a rapid pace to do it with, but like even just the smallest, I don't know, nuisance on the outside, like it'll disrupt that flow. And like you have to come
Wait, were
back
you
in, you
like
have to get it again.
were you in office when you were doing this job, or was this remote?
I was in office with what I'm particularly talking about, where like,
Yeah.
I'm at the computer and I'm cataloging a lot of stuff. I've got headphones in, and yeah, I did not want to be taken out of that. And then I don't know.
Now, even if I'm like imagining, like, I don't know, maybe I've just been spoiled by remote work for too long. I'm imagining like someone over my shoulder, like if I have my headphones, I'm doing something very like technical that requires my focus. And then they're just kind of like, hey, can I just ping you really quickly about this one project we're working on together?
Oh
I
my
think at this point
gosh.
I would crash out.
Oh my
Like,
gosh.
even even if we were
That
in
voice
office,
too, I'm
like
just like, yes,
the corporate voice.
PTSD strikes. Yeah.
All
Oh
right,
yeah.
so we just need to do a pivotal. Just we need to
Yeah.
take a pivot
Yeah.
really quickly, team.
And it's
And,
always the person that doesn't do any of this work, right?
Never.
Like they're on the outside, like, oh shit, I need to look important today, is what triggers in my mind.
Do you think that that's more susceptible to middle management, to where they kind of
Mm,
they have a job and they have things to be doing, but it's
yeah,
mostly like oversight and delegation, and they're not
that's it.
actually doing like the hands-on work?
Oh yeah, definitely, right? And again, you see that like in companies bloated with like venture capital, et cetera, where they're like not really, they need to spend a certain amount per year, and then I don't know, the whole thing is bloated. And just like from a perspective of wanting to get work done whenever you tie into an endeavor, like it just seems so, it's not efficient. It doesn't make any sense on the like grand scheme of things, which is if you're producing something, a job, a product, whatever, you want to bring something that's good, that's got like a standard to it. And that comes from like every little bit of work associated with it. So if the work associated
Mm,
with it is being micromanaged and you don't really, it's same as like in like war or something like that, like the soldier would have to trust the general, right? Like, and then know that the general like has clear sight on what needs to be done. You don't want to get taken out by some random person and told oh, well, I just need to like make sure you're doing your job right. I see you're over there typing away, but I just need to get a little better idea what you're doing. Well, everything is cataloged. We work on, computers now. So I feel like, if a manager
Yeah.
is doing something, it should be auditing a good amount of stuff. And then you can have a meeting after if you see something that needs to be fine tuned, but not midday, not corporate voice. And yeah.
Do you think that in general, meetings can be a tool for micromanagement?
Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely. Like in a negative way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like people who
Yeah.
don't need to be micromanaged, which ideally you would just hire people you trust first and foremost,
Hmm.
but that doesn't really happen as often. So you kind of see
Sure.
this where, personally I've experienced where people would call meetings in, just to keep tabs on literally everything you're doing. I know
Yeah.
someone who has a meeting every single day. They're also a marketer.
Yes.
Every single day to check in with the whole marketing department to see what everybody is doing. And at
Hmm.
that point, it's like you're taking this time out of your day to make sure that everybody's on the same page when you can just get, I don't know, a better project management software. I don't know, download ClickUp.
Something. Yeah. Yeah.
Go
Yeah.
get Notion or Monday or Asana or Basecamp. Like there's so many ways you can do that.
There's Yeah, 100%, right? And like, then if you get into that, how many times have you had a micromanager that you're just like, wow, they're really keeping us on target? Because I can't think of
No.
one really. Like my best
Seen
managers
nobody
were
ever.
always like, they make sure like you've got a good grasp of what you're doing. And once they see that like you are a driven individual, they know to kind of let you run with your gameplay, right? Your game plan.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know a single one that would like be. I'm like, oh yeah, I loved all the meetings that they gave me throughout the day. That was really good stuff.
Like I'm okay with like earning trust to a degree because I feel
Mhm.
like a lot of the reason why people want to stay on top of you to that degree to where they have to be like on top of 90% of what you're doing at all times is just because they don't trust you. Now, I
Sure.
feel like maybe some people have had bad experiences with hiring employees, so I try to have a little bit of grace with things like that because I know that you can't luck out every time. So maybe
Right.
they had an employee who kind of was taking advantage of, whatever processes they had or whatever a system of accountability they had, and that made them be more strict. Okay, fine. But I feel like, once they prove themselves like a good manager would just be like, okay, go do your thing, have fun. I
Yeah.
think that one of the biggest hallmarks of a poor manager, just in my personal experience, has been the inability to be flexible when it comes to like different policies with different employees. So maybe if you have an employee who needs to be kept on track a little bit more, maybe you just say, hey, do you want to do like a 2 times a week check-in or something? But I feel
Yeah.
like even that is like the maximum. If you have to check in with them like every single day, then at that point I would wonder like at what point do you just take the L and think that, maybe I did a bad hire and
Yeah.
should move on,
Yeah. 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 Um, you know, how often do you think that you've seen a manager like that who actually adds a lot of value to the bottom line of the company? Like their whole thing is like,
Never.
this is how many meetings I had this week. Every time I've interacted with somebody who's like super big on meetings, especially if they've got like a high and mighty position, right? Like they're VP of what the fuck ever, yada yada. They honestly, whenever like we have meetings, seem fairly clueless on a lot of the stuff that we're talking about. And I'm like, if a manager can't even inspect like what is supposed to be expected out of my position, then like what kind of meeting are we really going to have? Like I get like having, certain threshold meetings or like milestone meetings, things like that, right? Like where you're, again, once or twice a month, right? Like here's what we have based on the reporting that's been done. If you need some more clarification over everything, then like that's acceptable, that's understandable. But
Right.
random meetings, throughout the week from a person like that, I don't know exactly what that gets done for the whole, quite honestly. I think it's a
Yeah, for
I think it's a
sure.
facade.
With people like that, the problem isn't even just with the tiny meetings that they do all the time. If a
Hmm.
manager is at a point where they're so clueless, and they're hosting these meetings because they just want to kind of cover up the fact that they're secretly clueless as to the inner workings of the company, and the
Yeah.
things that their staff are working hard on, so they can pretend like, like you said, they're doing way more than they're actually doing because they have this big title and they can get away with doing it and whatever they need to spend the money so their investors don't get pissed off, what have you.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're also
Lot
the
of
kind
that.
of people who suck giving feedback when it comes to the meetings that actually matter, like for instance, employee reviews. So
Mhm.
I remember the first time that I had an employee review from a manager that didn't like traumatize me because I didn't understand what they were for. I didn't know the use of them, right?
Mhm.
Now I know, after speaking to people in the industry who have way more experience, is that the goal is to make sure that the employee is kind of like prepped for the overall goals of their position, and then kind of
Right.
take a look to see where they would be better fitted to head in the
Exactly.
future. In the past, however, I realized that there are certain companies that use things like these employee review meetings in order to justify not giving their employees raises. So I was working at an agency where I fleshed out the entire social media department of the agency. They had no social media program whatsoever before I came in. I did the entire SOP and all of that, but I was getting paid the same as everybody else. I was, young and fresh and just wanted to kind of like
Yeah.
prove myself in my career. And the employee review that I got, like I'd never did anything that was like offensive. All my clients love me. I never got any bad reviews. It was rough. And then, I went online and I was thinking, if I have this experience, there's probably like 10 people
Others.
on Reddit who had the same experience 14 years ago, right?
Yeah.
So I looked it up and I realized that I misunderstood the whole premise of the meeting. I was expecting to get like proper feedback, but it was
Uh-huh.
actually just justification of not giving me the money that I needed, that I
Yeah.
deserved, because they wanted to justify their, expenses or whatever. And that manager was also one of the managers who very on top of everything that everybody was doing. But I don't, if you ask me what she did all day, I have no clue. I have absolutely no idea.
Without the
So
meetings, these people are just they're sitting on their hands for the most part. I don't know. I mean, like that is what occupies all their day. I had 6 meetings today. I'm so fucking exhausted. What? You
from
know?
what?
Yeah. Um, yeah, and I think another interesting thing with that is the fact that like these people that host these micro meetings, like that's like their day in, day out. When turmoil strikes, which it strikes in any company, any entity is going to go through volatility periods, right?
Mm.
When shit hits the fan, so to speak, these are the people that like start blaming everybody because they don't have a good mindset on what is actually going on with the company, because these meetings don't produce a purpose of like educating the higher up. It's just like more of like a check mark so that then they can pass to
Really?
that higher up, oh well, I've been on top of everything. But
Yeah.
when things go bad, these are the people that then start micromanaging even harder, and it seems like they'll have even less grasp on the overall picture of what's supposed to be happening. When I think like instead of micromanaging so hard, they should probably be getting an education on what it is they are supposed to be managing in general, right? But who
Get it.
wants to do that? I don't know. That's a little too much work, I think.
I mean, I kind of want your perspective on this because you have obviously more career experience with the inner workings of many companies working through Sirlinks, and you've seen kind of like how different clients operate and things like that.
Mhm.
Who do you think would like, do you think that people who are in these positions to where the micromanagers, are trying to impress them? So like we're talking about the CMO, the CEO, whatever. Do you
Yeah.
think they know what's going on? Because when I'm looking at the patterns of who people decide, like if a company decides they want to, run in a more slim operation, they want to let people go. I don't often see the actual unproductive people as the ones who are being let go.
No. Yeah, they typically have some sort of job security, I would say, because I think the top down, like especially in like corporate America, I feel is like a kind of a good old boy buddy system, right? And they do a lot of validating between management positions versus dipping their toes in the nitty-gritty. But what this does too is it displaces blame, right? So the highest up, even though they have less exposure to what's going down on the day-to-day operations, they'll start hacking at whatever point they want and then, restart. Do I think these people have like good grasp on what the day-to-day operations are? No, especially like when you start seeing like CEOs get hired for positions at random companies. Like, to me, that's pretty interesting because like the head of a company not really understanding the inner workings of what they're getting in on, they're not going to have an advantage compared to somebody who really, and it's like a line that I remember, God, a famous SEO would say it all the time, but like, you've got to be able to inspect what you expect, and that's at all levels. That's why, like, I don't know, there's literally no part of Sirlinksalot or any business that I've got that I didn't, like, at some point I was doing all that work. And I think some of this downfall happens when you get an influx of money, from VC or something similar, and you start trying to delegate nonstop without actually understanding the positions under. I think it puts the overall at a huge disadvantage. And I know I got kind of off topic there, but at that point, like, you're kind of playing a different game. It's not really about keeping everything in line for the good of the whole as much as like filling out pocketbooks, I feel like. And then that business is completely different.
Right. Yeah, I feel like there's some industries that are more prone to that than others as well. Like you said, if there's a just tech in general, which is why right now I know they're going through like a pretty big overhaul when it comes to all these companies that are like restructuring, and there's a lot of panic about whether people's positions are even going to be coming back because they don't know what AI is reliably able to do and things like that. But I'm also hearing that because of this phenomenon that you're talking about, where a lot of the people who are up top don't really actually know what's going on with the inner workings of the company, they're replacing these positions because they're like, oh, it's fine and AI can do it. But I'm hearing that a lot of them are hiring back because they realize that the AI technically can do it, but it's doing a shit job just because AI is not there yet for a lot of things. So I find this insight to be like across the board, but it could also be like culturally specific as well. Because I know that like in Asia, which is me, I'm just kind of, oh my gosh, but the cultural commentary here, classic Artemis. But in Japan, I know meetings are way more like you would rip your hair out, Nick.
Oh
like,
yeah,
they're 100%. So much more frequent because the mindset is it's better if decisions are made more collectively, even if that's just maintaining the illusion of collectivity. So this meeting could have been an email is like a syndrome across. So I have a dear friend of mine who's been teaching in Japan for the past decade or so. And that's literally the only thing that she complains about. There's so, and she's from the UK, so she has like a lot of culture shock. So right now she speaks fluent Japanese. She's very well integrated. She's been there for like 15 years at this point. But the one thing that she'll say is like, I really just can't handle how many meetings there are. Like, no one will send me an email. People will even ask me to send a freaking fax because they don't want, they just want to have that feeling of we're doing our part, we're doing what we're supposed to be. But then again, the productivity level of workers in Japan is also actually not that much higher than how we do it. So,
on a cultural standpoint, though, I would say that I would probably have, and I might get in trouble for this, but I would probably have more hope for a Japanese upper management micromanager than I would for like a Western micromanager in the same position. And just from a basis of like wanting to execute your job at its best, I think that like there's such a high level of stress, specifically in Japan, because like all my friends, Japanese friends that are working in like corporate world over there, I'm like, dude, you poor guys are like, your hair is always falling out with how hard you are working at, the goal set of whatever it is you're working on. Versus my friends in similar positions here, like, I feel like a lot of times, like, they'll admit that they're just going through the motions to, be seen by the higher ups and keep getting paid, etc.
I don't know. I wouldn't feel good about that, honestly. I know. On the flip side, there's a Japanese language is one of the first languages that I learned. My best friend growing up was Japanese. So her grandparents didn't speak a single word of English. And when you're a kid, your mind's just a little bit of a sponge, right? So I started learning Japanese with them. And I also liked watching anime. I was a huge weeaboo. Now I think I could get around Japan, but my Japanese is kind of crap because, you know, if you don't use it, you lose it, right? But I do remember that in Japanese, it's one of the only languages that has a specific word for overwork. It's called shachiku.
Really?
So, yeah, literally, there's a word for working until you actually die. So,
Yeah, which is it's a thing that happens in Japan. Yeah, or you know, you just
wait,
you work
I think
nonstop.
yeah, shachiku is like one of the office workers who is overworked. I
Okay.
forgot the word for actually working until you die. I think, like I said,
Okay.
it's shit, but it's a concept. You know, it's a vibe.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it is. It
it
is
just
a
shows
vibe.
it's
Like, you
social
know, you look
culture.
at like Japan on like a cultural standpoint, specifically work culture, and it's like, holy shit, like working yourself to death. And not even just like in the corporate world, like from being a student on up, I feel like you've got that kind of drive. Like you compare, and I don't want to say like generalizations, but I feel like you compare the average you know, Japanese student to the average American student, or let's just talk about me. I was horrible at, you know, wanting, even in college, like I would skip class. I didn't take it too serious. Like the whole point was just, I'll get my piece of paper and I'll go figure out, you know, whatever after the fact. You know, there is I feel like a different perspective on the Japanese side of things that maybe keep some of this bloat from happening, but still, does that make it like a very efficient, good way to do things? I think there's different shortcomings, you know,
Yeah, there's
to
like
that
two levels
concept
to
there.
it. There's like
Hmm.
the efficiency side of it, which we would focus on as good American capitalists, and
Hmm.
there's the mental side of it as well. So
Yeah.
like the suicide rate in Japan is very
Yes.
high. Same thing
Yeah.
in Korea. They have similar work culture, and out of developed
Hmm.
countries, people in general are like miserable.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, like the productivity is also not high enough to justify
To warrant
that
it.
kind
Yeah.
of mental load. You know, like we're still people, we're still humans.
Yeah.
So it's one of those situations of like just because you can doesn't mean you should. Like
Hmm.
the even the students, like I know in South Korea, the biggest exam that a student has to take is the college entrance exam, and that literally
Hmm.
decides your entire life. So it's
Life.
not
Yeah.
uncommon for South Korean children to go to regular school and then afterwards go to a cram school and then
Hmm.
maybe go home and do their homework, and then they get like 3 or 4 hours of sleep or something, and then repeat it for their
Yeah.
senior year.
Hmm.
So that kind of like I think of that dedication, and part of me wants to admire it because I'm like, I could never like
Right. I
yeah,
know. Yeah.
like I work hard, but like I don't work that
Mhm.
hard and I will never work that hard. And you know, that I'm very intentional about that, right? But on the other hand, it's like if I did have to work that hard when I didn't really have much of a choice because the biggest resource in the country is their human capital, their human
Mhm.
labor. And you don't really have that many exports to back up the economy. So you invest all of that in your people and all of that
Sure.
pressure and stuff. I would I would fall apart.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be able to handle that.
Uh, and I mean, I think it kind of shows too, right? Like if you look at even just like relationship data over there, yeah, there's a lot of day-to-day stuff that suffers in, you know, relation to how much you put into the stress of work, having to rely on that work to get you to where you want to be in life. But in the end, you end up omitting what is real life for this train of endless stress and constant, you know, productivity loops and things like that.
For
Yeah.
you, as someone who owns multiple companies, what does your work-life balance normally look like? Like, do you prioritize it or are you like all in on business?
No, I prioritize it for sure, but I do have a bit of a luxury in the sense that, like, you know, I am a family man, but me and my child's mother, like, we never got married or anything like that, right? We realized kind of early on that romantically we were butting heads a bit, but that, like, as a team, you know, we spent all holidays together, etc. We do well, and I'll be honest, like whenever my child isn't with me, because like we have even split, I lock in and just work. I don't really like have too much social life, if I'm being honest. You know, if I do have free time, then it's still always kind of occupied on playing around with like a new concept or a new endeavor that can relate to work in some way. Like for me, creating is like the most fun that I have with all of this. And so like I'm always kind of like experimenting with different concepts, and like that keeps me from being bored. It keeps me like interested in navigating different pieces of business, etc. When my kid is here though, work is exclusively like, unless I've got to like really, you know, get something done, then I just tell him like, hey man, you know, you get to turn on the TV for a little while, which like we try and keep down a little bit, and Pops is going to be in his study, you know, doing what he's got to do for a little bit. But outside of that, I give him, you know, my utmost time. And then after he goes to bed, I'll be working at night. Or if I'm capable of waking up early in comparison to him, then I'll be in here drinking my coffee, kind of lining things out. But no, I feel like I don't. I got into business for myself, not because of like money greed, right? Like I got into it for time and
Right.
freedom. Like I don't like being told what to do, if I'm being honest. I'm a bit of a rebel in that sense. And so like when I really conceptualized, like I remember looking at the CEO of that last company I worked for, and we're talking about like a big company. They ended up selling for like 230 million or something. And I would just like look at him and I'm like, how did you figure this out? Like, how did you get to that position? And I think about that a lot because it did become like this sort of like visualization for me, where it was like, I don't want to be doing this. And even in college, I could never wrap my head around like, you know, when I got towards the end of it and like the professor would be like, oh, you know, you've got, because I went to UTSA, you've got Valero just opened up down the road. Like they got their headquarters there, this and that. And like, you know, good corporate jobs. Like in my head, I'm like, what the fuck? Like, I don't give a shit about like any of this. Like, I'm not interested. It doesn't seem romantic to me. And that's what allowed me to fuck off for, you know, my 20s up until the point where like, yes, maturity hit, you know, and you start wanting a different wavelength to exist on. And so like, yeah, that's where I visualized, how do you become the person that like decides what goes on? You have to work. Like I think one of the best pieces on, well, it's just like one of my favorite little books, and I read it like a couple times a year, but Khalil Gibran's The Prophet, in there, you know, it explains, it's got a little blip on work, and like you have to do it. It's part of life, right? But I wanted to do it on my own terms. So like a lot of, you know, that early mantra was built on trying to figure this out. But again, not because I wanted, it wasn't like I wasn't visualizing, oh, like this mansion and a Ferrari and shit like that. That wasn't the
What was
allure.
on your mind?
Freedom, like being
That's
able
it.
to decide. So like I've used this word a lot, and I've kept it in my head since, oh gosh, I don't know how long, but I use the word access a lot as a sort of mantra, because when I was younger, I liked traveling real cheap, and it was, you know, fun to be a vagabond and, you know, have to like scrape by and things like that. And there is some, you know, romantic ideology. You think of like Kerouac or like any number of people, and like, yeah, there's this cool concept there. But when you get older, then like you want access. Like what will, you know, financial freedom and work freedom look like if I achieve it, right? It gives you access. Well, I don't want to be fucking floating around broke through, you know, Southeast Asia. I'd like to have, you know, a 5-course meal at a Michelin star restaurant, whatever, right?
Right.
Not because like you want to show off or anything, but because you want that access, the ability to just say, I enter here, I can go here. Like you've just got this floating ability to kind of, for lack of a better way, like, you know, control your own reality, right? And so when I,
Right.
specifically when I had my kid, I knew that was going to become my utmost priority. Like there's nothing more important than like him having a good and happy upbringing to me. And so I think about like how I had a good upbringing, you know, but like my dad worked corporate and stuff. And I think about how much more time I get to spend with my kiddo. This is the type of stuff that like really keeps in my head is, you know, I've got the luxury of being able to give him the utmost attention. I've got the luxury of last week my aunt says something is wrong with her, right? Like, okay, I'll fly out to Argentina to go see you. Like, it doesn't matter, drop of a dime. Like, this access has been provided by keeping that as like a visualization standpoint in my head, right?
Right.
And so, yeah, you know, that's kind of what I was always after. And I think that's kind of, it's worked. You know, I like where everything's at, and it has given me incredible work-life balance, which is to me very important. While
The
back,
most important.
yeah, I
Yeah.
think so. You know, it's not for everybody. Not everybody's wired that way. I know I've even worked with people where like they're like, well, if you would work more on this stuff, well, no, because the fact of the matter is all of this came from like a desire to like be creative, right? I wasn't ever a
Right.
computer guy. I fell into it, and then I accepted it as like something that I could learn. And when I got to the adventurous part of it, where I'm like navigating these new things and I see the internet open up as like this other little world that is pure adventure and like endless adventure at that point, you know, it kind of reshapes your thought, and I don't know, it gives you a little bit more excitement in life. But all that is fun. That's creativity, right?
But you kind of have
And
to go through it in order to get to that point. Yeah.
yeah, and some people I don't think really they don't ever change their mindset, right? Like a lot of people exist on the hedonic treadmill for the sake of more and more and more and more and more. And I mean that's fine. There can be, you know, positives to that, but for me personally, like it's not what drove me. And so
Right.
I prioritize, you know, family time, creative time, above a lot of stuff, if I'm being
That's a
honest.
lot more respectable than a lot of other motivations that I've heard. And I know that you're 100% being honest, because that you have to have a very, very, very strong motivation in order to do what you've
Mhm.
done. Like the reason why most people do not do anything even close to entrepreneurship or anything that even looks like entrepreneurship is because they exist in a space where they don't see a need to. And you know,
Mhm.
that works for them, but even if they want something, they're thinking, oh yeah, it'd be nice if I had more freedom. They don't need freedom to the point where they're able to do all the really, really difficult things that it takes to, you know, start a business or enter a different field.
Yeah.
Like for me, when I first got into marketing, it was completely on accident, like literally every other marketer, because
Mhm.
I accidentally, you know, realized that I was good at what I did with marketing when I
Yeah.
was promoting my roller skating group. And
I remember, yeah, that was
yeah,
part of when we were first hiring you. I'm like, oh my gosh, she's been doing this for forever, and like had an eye at it forever, right? Like, yeah.
yeah, I didn't realize what it was until one of the skaters who, she's a product marketer. She came up to me and she said, "You know what you're doing is like you'd be a really good marketer. Like I look at the stuff that you're doing with like the Facebook groups and with all the content you're making and with all the, you know, the email list you made. Like that's not something that, you know, this is not like a hobbyist thing.
Yeah.
You're actually good at this." And I thought, maybe I am good at it. I was working in
Mhm.
property management at the time, and I decided that I was going to quit my job and then grind for 3 months to learn everything that I need to know with marketing and then get another job. And my husband was like, "Don't do that." I said, "You're not my real dad." And then I did it anyway. And then for 12 hours a day for 3 months straight, I was learning everything there was. If there's a marketing course, free or otherwise, out there, well,
Mhm.
like the reasonably priced ones, I was
Yeah.
out there taking it. I was
Mhm.
studying everything, learning everything. And so after 3 months of self-study, I went to an agency and I was like, "I'm ready for a job." And they were like, "Yep, yep, girl, you're ready
Yeah.
for a job."
You are.
And
Yeah.
that's that's the kind of thing that like when I tell people the kind of grinding that I had to do to even enter the field that I'm in from something as random as property management, they were like, "Are you joking? Like, I
Yeah.
can't do that. I'm not going to do that. Like, sure, I could work for 12 hours a day for 3 months straight, but you know that like what? That's crazy." I thought, okay, but now I get to do, you know, a lot more fun things. Like I get to travel around Europe and Asia and sometimes
Yeah.
South America, and just pretty much be wherever I want to. And for me, that is absolutely worth the effort. Would I do it again? Hell no. Absolutely not. Would I suggest that my hypothetical child do such a thing? No, I would bully them if they even like tried to tell me they want to do something like that. But I don't regret doing it. And
Yeah.
most people wouldn't, So I know for you it was probably like something either similar or worse because you're doing great.
I mean,
It's been rough.
the opposite would be you got to fall back in line, right? Like there was out of everything I've ever done, and I've said this a million times, nothing was harder than getting business working. It's like the most stressful periods, because it happened more than once, of my life, getting it to work. But would you say that like you got to where you are, right? Like you control your destiny out of, working that angle. Did you really work hard at visualizing the reality you wanted to exist in, where you're deciding where you want to be, you're deciding how much you want to work, etc.? Or was there something else that like kind of gave you the framework to stick to it long enough? Because like it seems like from what you're saying, like, yeah, it might have been arduous, but you got there through creativity. Like you were just having fun with these concepts at first, right? And then that's kind of what propelled you into everything you're doing now.
I think that it was actually completely visualization. And the reason why I say this is because I'll take it a step further. I'm the kind of person who has always been delusional about what I want and what I want to do, to the point where I will fully convince myself in my head that I'm already there.
Epic,
so with
yeah.
the roller skating group, it accidentally made the largest outdoor recreational roller skating group in the entire Pacific Northwest.
Really?
Because I was
wow.
like, we had features in like Elle Magazine, Seattle Times, interviews with NPR, like it was a thing. I had people like stopping me on the street, say, "Oh, I saw you in this one little publication, or I saw you in this advertisement," and I was like, "Of course you did." Like it wasn't arrogant. It was just kind of like, this is what I do. This is what I was made to do. And I feel like the only reason why I wasn't doing something similar, which is more like strict like marketing, that's not just like for my hobby before, was because I didn't realize that that was an option. So once I got rid of that limited belief, once my colleague, her name is Tiffany, by the way, she's great. Once she told me, you can do this, I was like, no, I didn't know. But now that you mention it, yes, this is me. This is it. And it was like a switch flipped on. And that's what I've been doing ever since. And the reason why I'm good at it is because I wasn't delusional about my skills. I was delusional about my ability to accomplish things that other people wouldn't even bother to do.
But we're using delusion in a positive sense here, right?
Absolutely.
Your delusion is no, because like 100%, I remember at beginning stages, everybody wants to tell you like you're pretty crazy right now. Like this is like it's not safe. Like it's not like it's crazy. Like you're going out on a limb. Like what if you fail? What if you lose everything? I mean, like it's not in your thought process. It can't be. Like if you're truly visualizing a certain outcome, you have to be delusional about it in order to execute on it. There's no way, because otherwise any little thing can take you off that fantasy, but like that's what helps shape your reality. And I firmly believe that too.
Right.
I won't go too far into I won't get called a conspiracy theorist quite yet, but I think visualization and being in tune with that delusion is it's something I think a lot of people don't practice enough anymore.
Right. I feel like the reason why I use delusion in a positive sense is because it's like shaping your reality, but it is reality while you're doing it. Does that make any sense at all?
Yeah, no, it is. Yeah.
So that's why like when everyone will call you crazy because it always seems that way from the outside looking in, and I don't think they're wrong for it necessarily, because like I said, my husband was just kind of like, Artie, please, like what please, like, are you being serious right now? I was like, yes, serious as the plague. Anyway, full speed ahead. But once he realizes what I was doing, he was very much on board with it. Same thing when I told him that I wanted to spontaneously just buy a one-way ticket to the Turkish Republic and live my best life. And he was just kind of like, he's seen what I'd done before. And he's seen that when I say I'm going to do something, I actually do it. And it works out fine. And he was like, you know what? Sure, let's go. Let's do it. And it's because he saw the power of my unchecked delusion. So,
Yeah, but I mean, that's a shaker and a mover right there. Like, you got to dream big. You got to like actually believe in yourself enough to try at it, and then I don't know. You might fail here and there, but ultimately, if you keep a strong enough visualization, and again, I think we kind of like need to define this, because I don't think either of us is talking about this like from perspective of like, oh, I got a little vision board and like I got my stuff on there. Like, that's not what fucking visualization is. Visualization has to do with like a broad stroke, a broad concept that you can hone in on, that sometimes for me like evolves from just like having a feeling, right? Like a desire. If I think of like the concept of freedom, like what does that mean to me? All right, well, hone in on that broad spectrum feeling and imagine how you'd want your life to be shaped around this concept, right? And then that's how you get true visualization, because your heart and your mind are speaking to like what you actually want out of life, right?
right. So were you
It makes it
envisioning
easy.
like this kind of like life where you can do
Not
what you need to, do what you want,
yeah, kind of. Like there was never any specific. It was like, if I had to tell you what the vision was, like it's almost like this really malleable dream state, right? Based
Mm,
on like an emotional kind of pressure or lack of pressure. So again, the concept of like freedom, financial, time, etc. All of that is like a blend of visions of me being able to spend quality time with people I love while executing on creative aspects that like add something to the rest of the world, right? Like you're leaving something behind, you're building something that's like grander than you. Was I picturing like working in marketing? Was I picturing, sitting here under like these lights and stuff? No, none of it, right? A lot of it, it's
right.
going to come and like it's going to present itself to you. And what it is I've noticed with friends or people I know that take negative aspects on all the time, that's their framework that they've built through visualization. So like it's going to be very hard to believe in yourself, to believe that like a lifestyle that you want is attainable if you haven't really given thought what you want to feel out of that lifestyle, etc. So like they exist on this negative plane where they're always sniping the possibility of getting somewhere, which like if you get slightly more delusional and have a little fervor about your creative outlets, yeah, you can end up, getting to these places. But I, I think it's like it's kind of a weird thing to talk about, because again, visualization is not based on like one concrete concept. Maybe you can keep like an image in your head and like create something out of it, but like it's more about like it's like an extensive daydream, right? And you're
Right.
spending a lot of time honing in on the feeling that you get from that daydream, and that's what you're after. Because yeah, I didn't know I was going to fall into tech. Like I not, through my teens and 20s did I think, this is how I would reach the things that I wanted. No. But that's also part of life, right? Is like exploration, getting in tune with things that like you're not really familiar with. That's all part of the adventure. And like when you start taking it in that way, it becomes easier to kind of, rationalize a way to get what you want out of life. Which yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah.
I kind of leave on this note because I'm
Mhm.
so curious after hearing about like the evolution of where you thought you'd be versus where you are now. When you were my age,
Mhm.
when you were like around 30,
Mhm.
what did you visualize yourself being at this age that you are now?
So, okay, I'm gonna skip a couple years back. I don't remember
Okay.
which
I'm
birthday
too
it
old.
was. No, it's just I can remember the day where like I made visualization a part of my lifestyle, right? It was one of my birthdays, and I was not content with where I was, with my lack of momentum, with like no real visualization, no real outlook on where I wanted to be, but just knowing that I wasn't happy with what I was currently doing. And so instead of like going out or anything like that, that's when I deleted my birthday off of Facebook, and I kept it like that until like a couple of years ago and stuff. And I wouldn't tell anybody when my birthday was, and I had friends that'd be like, he's an asshole, he doesn't tell anybody. I spent that entire night by myself with these two boards, these two white marker boards, writing rules down based on the life that I wanted to get. And like, I mean, it sounds easy, right? Like, I'm not talking about like, oh, I want a new car. Like, not that. Rules that if I adhere to them will get me the personality that I need to be to get on the wavelength that's going to help me get out of this current fucking place that I don't want to be in. And I'll find these rules, and I guess I'll post them up. I know they're somewhere. It probably took like 6-7 hours of me going back, and then I hung them on my door so that I had to read them every day before I left the house. And of course, over that like first couple weeks, you comb over the rules and like you kind of fix them a little bit and perfect them to the point where like I remember even after, I'd been reading them every day for like a couple years, like I can still go back to them now, and a lot of it still plays. Like that's the type of like depth I gave them, right? Like they weren't based on a week from now, 2 weeks from now. They weren't based on any concrete thing that I was after other than I didn't want to be on that wavelength anymore. And I'm a huge, proponent for, if something's wrong in your life, it's like it is your fault, in the sense that, not that people can't go through trauma, etc., but that if you allow these feelings to be the basis for your energy in life, like that is what's going to turn out. Like you get what you're thinking up. And on the opposite token, if you put yourself on a different framework with your thought, you might not get exactly what you're looking for either. It just gives you a better opportunity to find things that are going to get you somewhere else. And then a lot of it is about trying it out. You might not like the first 2 or 3 things that you do, that you jump into, right? But at that point, you've opened yourself up to like more exploration and bigger concepts than like what you were used to. And that's growth, right? Like giving yourself growth opportunities is always going to be a benefit, in my opinion. So yeah, I was right around 30, maybe a little bit before that, but that's when it really happened. And it was all based on those boards. But what I was thinking about in those boards wasn't a specific thought, not a specific thing I want. It's just, I don't want what I'm currently doing anymore. It's not making me feel fulfilled. And that's another thing that I like to keep things as simple as like one words, because if you're searching for truth, you can often find truth within like one word that like you utilize as like a mantra. And so, the one was access, right?
Right.
Out of
When
it.
you come up with it, we also want to see later on your rules, if you can remember them or if you can find them. So put your mantra word in there.
I know quite a few of them. Like I remember at the time, I was living barman life. So life was like a party at the time. And so one of the rules I wrote down was smile at pretty girls, but don't chase them, which seems like a kind of funny rule, but like it always stuck in my head because it was like one of the earlier rules and it's one of the more surface level rules. But like basically, using that as sort of like a concept on, don't get lost in things that don't add to the productivity you want, right?
I mean, like attracting things that are meant for you instead of trying to like force it to happen, sort of deal.
Yeah. And like, that's a way to like position a grander concept. Like you start reading the rules and like they become bigger, in the sense that like then you're reading that concept, but you're taking it to aspects of like friendship, aspect of like how much you give like a relative some of your time, things like that.
I see.
Right. So it's like these little spoken words that then have broader concepts attached to them. And Yeah, they
I
can
like
relay that
that.
information later on.
It feels also kind of like an anti need for validation sort of perspective as well, which I think that a lot
100%.
of people, including me, do struggle with as humans who are naturally wired to kind of crave that kind of connection and validation and things like that.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
honestly, I feel like after the podcast, I'm probably going to go and start thinking of rules that I would want to make for myself to like get myself to kind of like the next level. Nothing that's too like serious, but just to see like if I want to look at something like every single day and kind of brainwash myself
Yeah.
into. I mean, it is kind of like
I like
a
the
way of
words you
brainwashing myself.
attach to all this stuff because, like, there's always these negative words: delusion, brainwash myself. But these things like that is what you have to embody to get this stuff to work.
Yeah. I mean, these
Yeah.
are my kind of like everyday colloquialisms. Like I speak about myself candidly in this way all the time. I'm just, yeah, I'm just
Sure.
gonna brainwash myself into liking the rainy weather and I'll be fine with it. And lo and behold, 2 months later, I'm just kind of like, this is so cozy.
Mhm.
you know, and it works. So I'm gonna try to like go through I'm gonna call it the Nick method to see where it's gonna get me, and I'll check in next podcast. But in the meantime, I want you guys to drop us in the comments below one time that you were delusional in a good way, or you brainwashed yourself into getting something that you wanted, or something that you didn't know that you needed, but it popped up because you were crazy enough to do things that nobody else wanted to. In the meantime, we will be noodling on that, and we'll see you guys very, very soon. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Hey everybody, thanks for watching. If you found this helpful, make sure to give us a like, drop a comment, subscribe, so you don't miss out on any future SEO insights. And hey, if you're serious about your rankings, head over to Sirlinksalot.co, check out our premium link building services, guides, and free SEO tools. See you next time.